Hello, hello. Welcome to another Scrap Your Scraps Thursday night. I'm Crafty Chris, and tonight we're going to play around with just make a quick little Halloween card, but I'm doing a little test at the same time. So it's actually a Halloween tag. So I've got 5 different tag materials here. I think I'm going to use the smooth side of everything just to make it as close to the same as possible. What I'm testing is the permanence of a couple of different inks. So I'm testing Memento Tuxedo Black. I'm testing Ranger Archival. I'm testing Hero Arts Intense Black. StazOn Jet Black. And I'm also going to test Ranger Distress ink. Now, the Ranger Distress ink, I'm pretty sure, is not going to be a good choice because it's water soluble. Oh no, this is Archival, so it should work too. It just may not be as crisp a dark black as the others. All right, so the first thing I want to do is get a piece of paper. So I have something that's going to protect my media mat a little bit. So I have to keep changing up. And the first thing I'm going to do is on the back of this, I'm going to write what it is I'm putting there. So I'm going to start off with Memento. I have re-inked all of these guys. This was a brand new one, so I haven't inked this at all. Memento, I don't have a re-inker for, so that could be a partial problem as well. But I still will get a result, whether it will work with my distress inks when I'm doing the distress ink techniques. All right, so this is going to be Memento Tuxedo Black. All right, so that's Tuxedo Black. This is going to be Distress Archival, Black Soot, and this is going to be Archival Jet Black, and that's Ranger. They're both, these two things are both Ranger products, but one's a distress product specifically. And then I'm going to have an Hero Arts Intense Black. I've never used it, so I have no idea what to expect from that one. And then I have StazOn Jet Black. So we'll see how this goes. So I've got a stamp here. It's a little stamp of a spooky house, and I'm not going to put the entire stamp onto the background, but I am going to put a portion of it so you can sort of see a bit of it. And the other thing I'm going to need is some water and a stamp chamois. Let me just grab my stamp chamois. So there's my stamp chamois. And it needs to be revitalized because it's hard as a rock at the moment. So I'll just do that. And as you can see, it's well used and stained. But now it's all floppy and now it's no longer hard. Alrighty. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start with the Archival Distress ink. And I am just going to apply it to the left side of the house. And I am going to stamp that right onto my, there we go. It's interesting. Oh, those lines are supposed to be there. Okay, so that's that one done. I'm gonna let that dry. Get my stamp chamois. Get any excess ink off. Now, all of the black inks will stain until you actually physically wash, either with soap and water or a solvent remover, or a regular stamp remover. There we go. We're all set up for the next one. Make sure it's not wet. This one is Memento Black. And as I said, I didn't have a chance, I don't have a re-inker for this one, so I couldn't really get it to the point of and this may not be the best one because of that. All right, that's interesting. I didn't have enough to go underneath there, but that's not the ink's fault. That's my fault in turn as a stamper. All right, so with that in mind, let me get my little piece of foam out of here. I just have a really thin piece of foam that I got in a package at some point, so it just gives a little, it helps to give way a little bit when you're stamping so that you don't end up on a hard surface, because it doesn't really sometimes work if you do. Ranger's Archival Jet Black is what we're working on now. And let's go to, we're alternating the sides of the houses that we're using. Ooh, that looks nice. I just re-inked that, so it will probably play very well. And there we go. Nice. Okay. Get you guys out of the way there. And rub any excess off of there. Okay. And this one is Hero Arts Intense Black. Just make sure it's dry. This is my first time using this one. Ooh, it's nice and intense. Okay. Oops, flip that over. And line that up. There we go. Felt like it went on so much better. Oh well, that's interesting to note. Probably user error, but again, I'm not testing for intensity of black. I'm testing for water solubility or lack of that. Okay, let's just flip this around a little. Okay, dry it off somewhat. Okay, and this last one is going to be StazOn Jet Black. And I'm going to be doing this side. Yeah, for some reason I just get a very satisfied stickiness to this StazOn stuff, but it doesn't mean anything. Alrighty. Oops. I should have done more ink, but that's okay. we get a partial house. That looks pretty good. Oh, there's a little something in the hole, which left a blob, but again, that is my stamping and loading, not the ink. Okay, so I will clean that nicely after I've done my messing around. Okay, so I'm just going to hit these with a heater just to make sure they are dry. I use my little, these hands are perfect for not touching and not burning myself. Whoops, don't want to get my pen or that heated up. And it doesn't need much, just a little bit. And I'm doing it on my glass mat, which I'm not really big on doing. But I've got the undermat underneath the big mat, so it's all good. Just making sure they're all dry. This one is going to be weird, but that's all right. Maybe I'll put some words down the side of this one. Alrighty. Now, I am going to splatter. I'm going to start with crushed, brushed corduroy, because I want to get a base color. So I'm just going to put some brushed corduroy. I'm putting a whole whack of it there because I am going to be doing several. Let me use this to mush it together. Several bases, so I want to have lots. A bit of water. So that's nice and mushed in. Okay. So now I'm just going to put my thing in there. Literally just mush it on there. You just want to have a base. Okay. And I can take some of that off there. Hopefully they don't transfer. Some off of that one. Okay. A little bit of water. Take some off of this one. I literally am just passing the ink back and forth between the different pages to try and get some color on them. Ooh, that one's looking a little messy, isn't it? But I think it's more the scrubbing I'm doing. So let's just put a little more ink in there. And okay, I've got some definite sort of scrubby things on there, which is fine. I'm looking for bleeding and clarity of the ink coming through. All right, so now I am going to use, oh, before I do that, I need to dry these slightly. So we're gonna put these over here. Get my inks out of the way. And I'm just going to try to keep my hand from, I just want to dry the surface a little bit. Not affect. So that first color was brushed corduroy. And the second color I'm using is going to be Crackling Campfire. All right. And I'm just going to let that sit there like that. And that sit there like that. I'm going to get it moving with some water. Need a little bit more. Okay, probably use a little more on here. And a little bit more on here. I'm just making a mess of everything. And we've got a lot going on here and here. So I'll just get a little of that off. Dry this up. And really keeping it simple on the background. Most important thing is to get it dry. I like how the paper flattens back out again when you heat it up and get it dry. This piece is quite wet. I'll have to keep going back to it. Okay, these guys aren't too bad. Now, I have a fair bit of this left over. And I kind of want to get it all in the same area. I'm just going to try and play up, get it off my spatula there, and push it all in together. There we go. And just kind of spread it out a little bit. And then I'm just going to tap, 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 tap. There we go. Getting some interest in there. This one, I think I'm going to have to bring the interest in with the third color because it's quite waterlogged. There we go. And I think that's all finished. All right, so now we're going to dry these much more thoroughly. So in drying your inked pieces, I find that a more diffused head is better, a larger opening, so that even though the heat may be the same, it's spread out wider, so it's not as intense, so you don't burn your paper. If you're using a heat gun that you would normally use for embossing, which has a very narrow head, you want to make sure that you don't leave it on the paper for too long. Okay, I'm just going to pull these guys out of the way and clean off that orange. That orange and brown, I didn't mind if the burlap and the campfire went together because they're kind of in the same color range, but now I'm moving to a totally different color range. So I don't want to end up with brown, which is what will happen if I let the purple with the orange and the brown go together. And we'll end up a brownish blah. All right, now I want a fair bit of this, but I just want it in terms of ability to take sections of it. Okay, I don't want it to go on square-like, so I'm going to mix it up. And so I know that I've got different spots. And now I'm just going to plop in, and I'm going to do more than one plop for each of these. Whoops, too much on that one. And a little up at the top. That has a little bit more on it. This is watercolor paper and it sucks it up. It doesn't really allow it to move at all. Okay, so this one I'm not going to let it get super wet. In fact, just make sure I empty some of that over wet stuff. And I'm just going to dry off what I have here. This is just a bit wet as well. Move them over a little bit. Try not to dry up my ink because I'm going to go back in and do some more purple. Now I could use the Distress ink, which I am using, but I could also use the oxide. The only difference between the two is that the oxide has like a chalky base to it, so it goes on less transparently, which is one thing, but it also, the color isn't as vibrant. It's more pastel-y, depending on how much of the ink you actually use. So I tend to stay mostly with the ink distress versus the oxide distress, just because I like the more vibrant colors and the ability to have thin layers. So we'll stop there and we're going to hit again. Got a dog hair on there, so I'm interested to see what's going to happen with that dog hair. Some interesting stuff playing around here. Now I don't want to drag it on the mat because that does give an interesting technique, but it's more burnished looking. All right, I think I need a little more up in the top corner of this one and the bottom corner. So this is how I just kind of add more stuff in, and we're getting down to the nitty-gritties. And I'm not sure I can pull very much more out of that. No, it's pretty pale. I don't think there's going to be much color in that. No, it's pretty clear. Okay, so we're just going to leave it alone and clean up. And I always hang on to my napkins, my paper towels, and my baby wipes because I like to use them in my art journals. This one isn't very vivid, but I can show you others that are quite pretty. So, you know, getting things all over it. Oh, this one's very vibrant. Now, I don't consider this done because I'm going to use it to wipe up other things, but you can see how over time your paper towels can take on some interest. And you don't necessarily use the whole paper towel, you just use the sections that you like. This even has glitter on it. So yeah, so you don't throw those paper towels out. This is just a beginning towel, a baby towel. It's not ready yet. Okay, let's dry these guys out and let's see about color fastness. That one's really gone pale, so I wonder which one that is. And I hesitate to make a comment on the clearness of the ink because I did have some issues with some stuff being stuck on the stamp, and what was the other thing? And a bit of a movement in the stamp when I stamped it, so I'm not probably going to worry as much about that. But let's take a look at what's going on. Okay, so this one, if I look at these two pieces, maybe I'll turn my overhead light off so you can have a little bit of a look. You can see how this one is much darker black than that one. So this kind of got washed out, even though it didn't really, you can't really say that it blended together, it did get washed out. So that's the Hero Arts Intense Black, which is interesting. Now, I've only ever stamped once with that. It could be my stamping that's the issue, but it's interesting to note that it kind of fades away in the background. So that one I'm not as impressed about. It doesn't mean that I won't ever use it. I might give that another shot doing a different technique, but where there's lots of water involved, this one I don't think is the best choice. Now, if I look at these guys, so in terms of, okay, so out of these three, this one is a bit washed out as well. And this is the one I had trouble stamping in the center, but that's only because I was the problem and not the stamp or the ink. But it is a little bit faded compared to these other blacks. Now, I know the ink has gone on the top of the stamp, and I could restamp it and make it crisp again, or wait altogether and stamp it at the end. Those are perfectly viable options. But if I'm going to have multiple layers, these two seem to fade out, and it's not like this fading out is in a dark area. It's actually in a light area, but I can still see that fading. So let's see what we have here. These three are pretty crisp. If I'm going to compare the less dark black or intense black, it's going to be this middle one, and that one is the Distress Archival Black Soot. Part of the reason for that black being less intense is the fact that Black Soot is not a true black, but it's pretty good compared to these other two inks, which are the Memento Tuxedo Black and the Hero Arts Intense Black. So it does a better job, Distress Archival, than Memento and Hero Arts at this point. And again, remember the Hero Arts, it was my first time using it. So I'm going to put a rating here. Worst to best. There we go. All right, now I'm looking at these two. And this is a hard decision because the blackness is about the same. So I'm going to compare these two areas here and here because they look about the same background color. And wow, I really can't tell the difference. Those two are fairly well black. And wherever the black isn't faded because of the way I stamped, it is black. So both of those I would say are good options. One is a StazOn Jet Black and the other one is a Ranger Archival Jet Black. So I guess it's whether or not you like a product that can be cleaned up easily with soap and water, or you want a product like StazOn, which is a solvent-based ink pad and does require a solvent cleaner to really clean it properly. You can clean it with soap and water, but you won't get all of the cleaning done. So my recommendation, StazOn if you like the solvent based stuff, or Ranger Archival if you like the water easy cleanup stuff. So that's pretty cool. And this is not solvent. It is an acid-free dye, and this one is fast-drying solvent. So those are the two options out of this small little sample I'm doing here of the two things that I think would work best for understamping. Overstamping is a whole other thing. But definitely if you're working with water, these two products work really well. I like the feel of this one because it feels very velvety almost when you're putting it onto the stamp pad. This one is good too, but I tend to lean towards the solventy one. But again, like I said, it causes you more cleanup issues than the Ranger Archival. So that is my process. And then of the three remaining ones, I'm not a big fan of the Hero. That would be my least favorite. Then the Memento is my second favorite from that, so my second least favorite. And then I have the Distress Black Soot, mostly because it's not a true black, but it is quite intense black compared to these two guys that kind of got washed out. And that's it. That's my demo for today. I know it's a short video. I just happened to be doing some playing around in my room and thought that I'd like to share what my process is for testing different kinds of inks and papers and whatever. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did and you'd like to share it with your friends, please feel free to do so. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the video below. Have a great week. See you next week.